The political climate in academia has increasingly become hostile and toxic, making it difficult for individuals to work in an environment that promotes open-minded discussion, free expression, and intellectual curiosity. As someone with 4 college degrees in business and IT, I believe the situation has resulted in numerous professors and students leaving the education system due to a growing sense of discomfort and fear of retribution for holding certain non-leftist political beliefs. The percentage of college students who believe the political and social climate on their campus prevents people from freely expressing themselves rose from 54.7% in 2019 to 63.5% in 2021, according to a new survey conducted by Heterodox Academy. At the same time, the percentage of students who describe themselves as reluctant to speak freely on certain topics deemed controversial was far lower. Nearly 41% felt that way in 2020. Despite many students agreeing that speech is suppressed on campus, there seems to be a large percentage of troglodytes who want exactly that. For example, a survey conducted by the Knight Foundation found that 61% of college students believe that colleges should prohibit offensive speech, while 40% believe that hate speech should not be protected by the First Amendment. Not very liberty-minded of them, is it? Another survey by the Brookings Institution found that 44% of students believe that it is acceptable to use violence to prevent someone from speaking on campus if their views are deemed offensive. Ponder that for a second. 44% believe violence is okay to suppress free speech. It certainly seems that academia is out to create its own little red guard. These statistics suggest that a significant portion of the college-aged population hold views that are incompatible with the principles of free speech and open dialogue, and highlights the need for a more robust defense of these values within the academic community as well as from parents and students. 19th-century scientists versus 21st-century scientists, or the scientific method versus cultural Marxism. There has been an excessive amount of influence given to academia and the rest of the public school system. It would be more beneficial for students and professionals to be trained by experienced practitioners. Here are a few reasons why potential teachers should avoid academia. 1. Insufficient pay. Compared to other professions, pay in academia can be low, especially for those in non-tenured positions. Much of the money goes to useless administrators nowadays. 2. Pressure to publish. The emphasis on publishing in academia can be intense and lead to burnout, and there's always pressure to say the politically correct thing. 3. Bureaucratic and political issues. Navigating the complex bureaucracy of a university can be challenging, and politics can play a role in decisions and evaluations. 4. Competition for funding. Securing grant funding can be highly competitive and time-consuming, and the lack of funding can limit research opportunities. 5. Isolation. Working in academia can be isolating, as interactions are often limited to other academic colleagues. And isolation can lead to wacky theories that have zero application to the real world. 6. Resistance to change. The academic environment can be slow to adopt new ideas and technologies, leading to frustration and a lack of innovation. 7. Lack of professional growth opportunities. Professional growth opportunities in academia can be limited, particularly for those in non-tenured positions. In addition, the majority of university-based training programs are primarily taught by academics or professors who are selected and advanced based on their ideology rather than their ability to educate and prepare professionals for future careers. Behavioral interview questions help colleges weed out non-believers. This often leads to a disconnect between the skills and qualities needed for research and the attributes necessary for effective training. Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, a Canadian psychologist, professor, and author, has criticized what he perceives as the decline of academia, blaming it on various factors including 1. Political correctness. He argues that the rise of political correctness has led to a lack of free speech and intellectual diversity in academia. 2. Ideological conformity. Peterson argues that the dominance of certain ideologies in academia has resulted in the suppression of alternative perspectives. 3. Lack of rigor. He argues that the decline of academic standards, such as grading and curriculum, has led to a decline in the quality of education. 4. The decline of Western civilization. Peterson argues that the decline of academia is reflective of the broader decline of Western civilization. 5. Cultural Marxism. Peterson argues that cultural Marxist ideas have infiltrated academia, leading to a decline in standards and a focus on identity politics. Another prominent example of a modern-day critic of academia is Bret Weinstein, who was kicked out of Evergreen University for going to work on a day when white people were not supposed to show up. Bret Weinstein. Weinstein, an evolutionary biologist and former professor at Evergreen State College, has been a vocal critic of various aspects of academia. Some of his criticisms include: 1. Lack of intellectual diversity. He argues that universities are becoming increasingly homogeneous in their political beliefs, and that this lack of diversity stifles critical thinking and limits the exchange of ideas. 2. The rise of identity politics. Weinstein argues that the focus on identity politics in academia has led to a decline in the pursuit of objective truth. 3. The decline of free speech. He argues that the trend of limiting free speech on campus, particularly when it comes to controversial or unpopular ideas, is damaging to academic freedom and intellectual inquiry. 4. The decline of meritocracy. Weinstein argues that the emphasis on diversity and inclusion in academia is leading to a decline in merit-based decision-making, such as in hiring and promotion. 5. The decline of the humanities. Weinstein argues that the humanities have lost their focus on rigorous analysis and critical thinking and have become dominated by ideological and political agendas. Another major critic of the modern education system is Jonathan Haidt. He has written some great books including Coddling of the American Mind, which also covers the evergreen story, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Separated by Politics and Religion, and The Happiness Hypothesis. Jonathan Haidt. Some of these critiques are beginning to get repetitive, but Jonathan Haidt, a social psychologist and professor at New York University, has also been a critic of various aspects of academia. Some of his criticisms include: 1. Political polarization. He argues that academia has become increasingly polarized, with a majority of faculty members aligning with left-leaning political views and a lack of intellectual diversity. 2. Lack of viewpoint diversity. Haidt argues that universities should strive for viewpoint diversity and encourage students to consider a wide range of ideas and perspectives. 3. The decline of free speech. Haidt argues that the trend of limiting free speech on campus, particularly when it comes to controversial or unpopular ideas, is damaging to academic freedom and intellectual inquiry. 4. The decline of the humanities. Haidt argues that the humanities have lost their focus on rigorous analysis and critical thinking and have become dominated by ideological and political agendas. 5. The decline of critical thinking skills. Haidt argues that the decline of critical thinking skills in higher education is a result of a focus on ideological conformity and a lack of exposure to diverse perspectives. Universities and academia have been facing increasing criticism in recent years, with scholars, researchers, and academics pointing out a number of issues that have contributed to a decline in the quality and credibility of higher education. Some of the most prominent criticisms include the lack of intellectual diversity, the rise of political correctness, the decline of meritocracy, and the decline of critical thinking skills. James Lindsay. James Lindsay, a mathematician and author, has argued that the dominance of certain ideologies in academia has resulted in the suppression of alternative perspectives and the promotion of flawed research. Similarly, Haidt has argued that universities should strive for viewpoint diversity and encourage students to consider a wide range of ideas and perspectives. Another major concern is the rise of political correctness in academia. As Weinstein has noted, the trend of limiting free speech on campus, particularly when it comes to controversial or unpopular ideas, is damaging to academic freedom and intellectual inquiry. This trend has been criticized by many for stifling free speech and hindering intellectual progress. A related criticism is the decline of critical thinking skills in higher education. Jordan Peterson has argued that the decline of critical thinking skills is a result of a focus on ideological conformity and a lack of exposure to diverse perspectives. Haidt has similarly criticized the decline of the humanities, noting that they have lost their focus on rigorous analysis and critical thinking and have become dominated by ideological and political agendas. The rub. The criticisms of universities and academia are legitimate and reflect a broader trend of declining standards in higher education. Whether it's the lack of intellectual diversity, the rise of political correctness, the decline of meritocracy, or the decline of critical thinking skills, these trends are eroding the quality and credibility of higher education. It's imperative that universities take these criticisms seriously and work to address these issues in order to restore the integrity of the academic enterprise. It is past time to abolish teachers' unions and the Department of Education. Wouldn't you agree? Please subscribe and leave your comments below.